What's up guys, Phoenix here. This video is going to be the very much requested deck profile for the Red Eyes deck list that I've been playing in my most recent Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Duel videos that went up on my channel a few days ago. Now, I've done a lot of testing with this deck, and this is by no means the be-all end-all conclusion that I think, this deck could have come to, but it's definitely what I've been having the most success with on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro and DN servers, and I've been having a lot of fun playing this deck, which is very strange because I usually don't like playing control-based decks that much or that frequently, but this deck is an outlier to that. Mainly because it's probably just because it gives me a very old-school nostalgia-y feel playing with this deck, because back in 2010 when I got back into the game after a short break, the very first deck that I picked up and played again was Disaster Dragon, and this deck feels very much like that deck to play in terms of just stringing your plays along one turn after another and doing things like that in that form and that function. But ultimately, I'm not going to waste too much time rambling. Unfortunately, this isn't going to be an IRL deck profile because I don't own any of these cards, and I have no real desire to own any of these cards because it's not one of the best decks in the format. I'm not going to dedicate my time, money, and resource in general to picking up a deck like this where it has no promise to be one of the best decks in the format. These cards are all very good quality, and I've definitely said that many times in the past in terms of this support. And I believe, truthfully, that if this deck had come out, if these cards had come out for this deck, rather, about 3 or 4 years ago, that discounting all other factors of what the game might have done at that point, this could have been one of the top decks of the format in terms of how the game was played back then. It was a much different beast than it is now. But anyway, enough of that rambling. The deck list is as follows: 1 Red Eyes Darkness Metal, 2 of each vanilla, 2 regular Red Eyes, and 2 Black Flare Red Eyes. I've never really needed a third, and I wanted to minimize clumping in my hands, and they're definitely accessible if you need them for like Cards of the Redstone and things like that through other methods. 1 copy of Summon Skull to use the Red Eyes fusion. 1 Keeper of the Shrine. I absolutely love this card. I see some people that don't play this card, and I think they're absolutely insane. There are multiple games that I've just been carried by this card, just adding back cards from grave when, your vanilla Red Eyes die. It definitely allows you to play a simplified game state of just dick beat, and like, your monsters are bigger than theirs in simplified game states, and this card just consistently makes it to where you will not run out of monsters, since it counts as a 2 tribute, and if this dies, one of these dies, this will come back, and then it'll add this back to your hand, and then on your very next turn you can tribute summon for that again if you need that situation to be a thing. So it's very much a card that I really enjoy, Keeper of the Shrine. I don't know why some people don't run this card. This card is absolutely insane in terms of what it does for you when you get down to the simplified game states that this deck tries to thrive in. Triple Black Metal Dragon. Its attack boost is very relevant, and I also just wanted to search my power cards like Return of the Red Eyes and Red Eyes Fusion. And it also just has very cool interactions with Kinkabayu, which is honestly my favorite card in this deck. Speaking of, 3 copies of Kinkabayu. This card allows so many different play lines in terms of what you're allowed to do. As soon as you have it in circulation, you can get back Valor, Blackstone, or Black Metal Dragon. And all of those different things, combined with whatever other cards you might have on field or in circulation, just amass a massive amount of different decision tree branches that you can go down, and that's definitely what I look for in a card. And the fact that it's just a recurring +1 every turn that you use it, it definitely helps out the simplified game state aspect of this deck, being that every turn you resolve it and keep it coming back to your hand, it is going to be a +1 in terms of what it gets for you. But then even if you have to throw it away into something like a Beast Eyes or a Formula or even a Trishula, it's definitely just, it strengthens all of your play lines and play scenarios that really just makes this card very powerful in my specific, mindset and how I like to play this deck. 2 copies of Blackstone. I didn't want my hands to clump, and as soon as you have the first one, you never really need a second. And Dragon Shrine searches this card. You have 4 different cards in this deck that draw 2 cards. You have a lot of different, ways that you can get into this card, and you don't even necessarily need it, but it is definitely good to have in your, starting hand. But it's basically searchable off Dragon Shrine, as I've already said, and then once you already have the first one, it continually recurs itself where you need it, as well as constantly fueling itself by putting Red Eyes back in your deck and stuff like that. So I've never really felt the need for the third one, and the third one, whenever I'd put it in, it would always just be really clumpy for me. If you wanted to play a third, you could swap out a Black Metal Dragon for one. I mean, that's definitely an option that you could do, but personally, I'm fine with 2. And then 2 copies of Valor, just to be a trap as well as being a tuner to work with Kinkabayu. This card definitely comes up a lot where you can just summon Kinkabayu, bring back Valor, and already have a Red Eyes on the field via either Darkness Metal or them just sticking or being off Return of the Red Eyes. And it allows you to go into some level 8 synchro options that allow this deck to have, again, as I've said, giving Kinkabayu a lot more different play lines that you can go into. But also, it's just really good in terms of this deck can afford to play a lot of fair cards because it is a fair deck in aspect, but it's a very unique fair deck in the way that it operates. It operates by putting big monsters on board, which thus means that your opponent has to deal with those big monsters, and usually the methods that they have to deal with those big monsters makes your fair cards like Valor and your very fair traps makes them get a lot more value and be a lot more high impact. If this deck didn't operate in the way that it did, I don't think I'd be playing any of these cards, because these kinds of cards, Valors and these traps like Fiendish Chain, Mirror Force and all that, aren't really good in the current format of Yu-Gi-Oh! Because they're very fair cards. But once you combine them with trying to protect something like a Darkness Metal or a Black Archfiend Skull Dragon, or even one of these vanillas which are huge in their own right, and you're pressuring them with constant Kinkabayus every turn, these fair cards become a lot more impactful, and that's something that this deck really takes advantage of. But anyway, onto the spells. Triple Red Eyes Fusion. As you may have noticed, I'm only playing one Summon Skull, but I'm playing 3 of these. The reason behind that is because I wanted to see this card before I ever saw Summon Skull. You could play a second Summon Skull if you want to, but I didn't want my hands to clump and be cloggy, as I've said before. But also, as soon as you resolve the first Red Eyes Fusion, you put Summon Skull in the grave, and you can actually get Summon Skull back off of Return of the Red Eyes, which is another reason why I'm playing multiple Black Metal Dragons, multiple Return of the Red Eyes, things like that. I'm basically just trying to resolve the first Red Eyes Fusion and put the Black Archfiend Skull Dragon on board, and then by the next time I have Red Eyes Fusion, I'm hoping to have resolved either Black Metal Dragon or drawn into Return of the Red Eyes, to where I can use Return of the Red Eyes to bring back a Summon Skull, and then I can use that as a free material with the second Red Eyes Fusion if I even need to resolve the second one. But, like I said, you can bump Summon Skull to 2. I personally just have found little need to do so, because I do not want my hands to be very, heavily too heavy down by vanillas that I can't summon right away. That's definitely like the downfall I see in a lot of people's builds, where they just get hands where a lot of these are in it and they just can't play. But continuing on, 3 cards to the Redstone, triple Dragon Shrine, 1 Allure of Darkness, 1 Soul Charge, 1 1-for-1, and 1 Raigeki. I've tested Silver's Cry, I didn't really like it, but you could definitely just put it in and replace it with something like, you could probably take out Raigeki and put in a Silver's Cry. Just because it's just another card that allows you to extend your plays further. But honestly, in terms of a card like that, that's a card I'd either play 2 or 3 of, or I'd play none of. In terms of teching one of them, it never really came up that much, because by the time you're using it, you could already have been like establishing Return of the Red Eyes and stuff like that. And Kinkabayu, just constantly keeping pressure is something that this deck allows you to do if you have a hand capable of doing so. And I mean, like I said, you could definitely put in a Silver's Cry if you want to, but I have found no need for it. And then just 2 copies of MST in the main, just because this deck loses to a lot of very interesting things in terms of, like, even just a timely Bottomless can just ruin you. So I like playing these. These might actually get swapped for Lances, because that makes, in turn, these guys a lot bigger in terms of what your opponent has to deal with. But as of right now, I've just been enjoying space, mainly just because it's a Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro server thing, and you just kind of have to hit problematic cards because everyone's playing very random things. If I was going to enter an actual tournament with this deck, these would probably be Forbidden Lances. But anyway, onto the trap lineup. 2 Return of the Red Eyes. I want to draw into this card. I also want to search off Black Metal Dragon. This is arguably like one of the best cards in the deck in terms of what it allows you to do, especially since Red Eyes Fusion makes your Archfiend Skull Dragon, it makes its name Red Eyes Black Dragon, so it can also be used as something to keep on field with Return of the Red Eyes. So it's just something that I really like this card, and a lot of my game states that are very, sculptable involve having this card or Kinkabayu, and so if I don't have Kinkabayu, I definitely want to have this card, because it just allows you to keep constant pressure. It is a free monster every turn, and also just being able to bring back Summon Skull to use off a second Red Eyes Fusion is something that I constantly end up doing throughout the course of my play lines and play cycles. But the last 6 traps are very fair cards, I guess you could call them. 2 Fiendish Chain, 2 Mirror Force, 1 Vanity's Emptiness, and 1 Solemn Warning. I've tested like Crush card and stuff like that. I didn't really like them because Crush would put you into awkward scenarios where like you had to keep something on board like Black Metal Dragon or Keeper of Shrine when you wanted to just like do something else. The only real cool thing I did with Crush card ever was like I used it to dodge a Valor on Kinkabayu, but even then I was getting rid of my Kinkabayu. But it was technically gone either way, so I guess that doesn't really matter. But ultimately I just cut Crush because I didn't really see the need to play it. I've thought about maining Mistakes in this deck. That's something I've actually tested, and it actually worked really well, but I just took them out because there's not a lot of things on the online servers that you will play against that mistake hits. But if I was going to enter a actual event, like I said, these cards could be lances, or they might actually end up being mistakes in the main, because the only card that is hurt by mistake is Black Metal Dragon. So it's literally 3 cards out of your deck, and that's actually just a really fine number to have. But anyway, the extra deck: 2 copies of Archfiend Black Skull Dragon, 2 copies of Beast Eyes Pendulum Dragon, 1 number 11 Big Eye, 1 Draco Sack, 1 Guy Dragon the Thunder Charger, 1 Master of Blades, which I have never summoned in the probably 100 or so games that I've played with this deck. I've never summoned this guy once that I can recall. 2 copies of Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon, 1 Formula, 1 Stardust Spark Dragon, 1 Scrap Dragon, 1 Crimson Blader, and 1 Trishula Dragon of the Ice Barrier is the entire extra deck. There are a couple other things that I'd like to fit in here, but like nothing necessarily that's too overly necessary. I might cut Master of Blades just for like another synchro, like a Thought Ruler or something, because it's arguably like just as easy for you to make a level 8 as it is to make Master of Blades in terms of committing 2 7s into something, especially since your 7s are vanillas. But like that also has its flaw in terms of theory, because that means you have to have Kinkabayu or you have to have a Veiler. But ultimately, I'm perfectly fine with how the extra deck is structured as is. You can resolve 2 Red Eyes fusions in a game. You can resolve 2 Kinkabayus into Beast Eyes plays, and your Kinkabayu play into Beast Eyes, for those of you that don't know, is ideally you go Kinkabayu, bring back Black Metal Dragon, and you send them both to the graveyard to summon Beast Eyes, and then Black Metal Dragon will search either Return of the Red Eyes, Darkness Metal. You can search Red Eyes Fusion for a following turn. You can search one of these to combo with cards to the Redstone. There's multiple different things you can do in that sort of situation that allows Beast Eyes to be really good. And it's also just a free 3000 beater, but most of the time when you summon it, you are going to be grabbing Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, and you either banish this or you banish another dragon that you just had on the board for no reason, and then you summon it. And then Red Eyes is a consistent plussing engine every turn that it's left there, as well as, you know, just being a big enough body by himself as is. But overall, I haven't tested with Tracer Dragon. I do have it here just because I know that it is coming out. If it isn't already out, I think it comes out in next set or something. But I think if anything, Tracer Dragon just kind of does the same thing that Keeper of the Shrine does, while being a Red Eyes name that's searchable. So there is possibly that. I don't know. I haven't really tested with it just because I've been testing with the cards that we currently have access to. And for those of you that say we don't have access to Beast Eyes, it is a jump promo, and I believe it's actually already out. So if it's not already out, it's coming out very soon as an alpha jump promo. So that's the reason that I started testing with it again, where I was not testing with it the first time that I played this deck. So, ultimately, as always, guys, thanks for watching. As always, comment, rate, subscribe, like the video if you liked this deck and you want to support my content's growth now as well as in the future. Links, as usual, are in the description to both my Facebook pages. Go to either link, do the appropriate action with either. If you want to just get some generic chatting or discussion with me, that is the place you could do so. But note that I am usually busy a lot of the time in terms of things that I'm doing during the day. So if I don't immediately respond to you, don't get offended, because a lot of people think that I'm just ignoring them for no reason. It's like, no, I'm actually just not at home, or I'm not in a position where I can respond. So keep that in mind. Click on it if you have not. I'd greatly appreciate it. It helps me make money, and there's no reason to lie to you guys about that. And it would be just greatly, greatly appreciative if you did so. I can't force you to do so, and I wouldn't be offended if you didn't do so. Just know that it helps me out amazingly, more than you could ever know, and it is a great way to support me if you decide to do so. But that is it for this video. If you have any questions specifically about this deck, ask them in the comments down below, and I'll try my best to address them. But other than that, as always, guys, take care.